In this video, I'm going to show you where to find advertising expense in a company's financial statements. You might be thinking, hey, that's easy. Expenses are reported on the income statement. But here's a set of income statements for the company PepsiCo. If you look closely, you're not going to see any line item that says advertising expense. Does that mean that PepsiCo, this large company that makes soda, they make snacks, they make all these different things, they don't spend any money on advertising? No, that's not true at all. So, where is it that we would find advertising expense? Well, for many companies that have advertising expense, you have to go to the notes to the financial statements to see how much they spent on advertising. So I went to note 2. Okay, this is from the 10K filing that PepsiCo did with the SEC, okay, their annual report. Went to note 2 of the financial statements. For some companies, it'll be note 1. It's not always going to be note 2. You can do a Control F or Command F search, right, to look for the word advertising, which is what I did. And you see that they had advertising expenses, $3.9 billion for 2024. Okay, then they also tell you for 2023, 2022, etc. Okay, so $3.9 billion for 2024. Now, if you're wondering, well, where is that? Okay, it's reported as selling, general, and administrative expense. Okay, so it's part of SG&A. So if we look back at our income statement, here we have selling, general, and administrative expenses, and these amounts are in millions. So this was a little over $37 billion for 2024, and they're basically saying, look, $3.9 billion of that, up here, that $37 billion, $3.9 billion of that was advertising expense for PepsiCo for 2024, okay? Now, so they don't have it as a separate line item in the income statement, but it's part of the SG&A. Now, you might have also noticed here, deferred advertising costs, right? See that? Deferred advertising costs, $58 million as of December 28th, 2024. And it says that that is a prepaid expense. So that's advertising costs that have not yet been expensed. So like think of it as they paid in advance, they prepaid advertising, right? They paid for an ad, the ad has not been run yet, so it hasn't been expensed yet. So where's that $58 million gonna go? Well, that's not part of advertising, that hasn't been expensed yet. So that is gonna be on the balance sheet. It said it was under prepaid expenses. Okay, so right here, prepaid expenses and other current assets, PepsiCo had $921 million of that as of December 28th, 2024. And it was saying that $58 million of that $921 million is basically deferred advertising costs. So advertising, they spent money on ads, but the ads had not been run yet, so it hasn't been expensed yet. But advertising expense, so ad costs that have been expensed, are typically going to be an SG&A expense. Now, some companies will actually give you a little more info where they're not just going to have SG&A and the advertising expenses buried in there. And I'm going to give you an example with Nike. Okay, Nike does not just have something here saying, oh, SG&A, and then you got to go to the notes and say, what's an SG&A? They actually have this demand creation expense, right? A cool thing to call it, all right? So demand creation expense, and these, again, the amounts are in millions. So for 2024, $4.285 billion. So then you go to the notes and you say, well, what's in that demand creation expense? And so in the notes, they tell you advertising and promotion costs. Okay, so advertising costs. So they have the advertising costs, $4.285 billion for 2024 for Nike. Now, they also tell you in the notes, they have prepaid advertising, okay, just like PepsiCo, and then that's going to be in the prepaid expenses on the balance sheet. So advertising costs that have not yet been expensed, going to be on the balance sheet, typically in prepaid expenses, other current assets, and so forth. But advertising expense, in this case, they don't call it advertising expense, call it demand creation expense, but it's basically this is advertising expense. So Nike is actually putting it on the income statement, on the face of the income statement. But a lot of companies I found put it in SG&A. And I want to give you another example. So this is kind of like how Pepsi did it, but now we're going to do General Motors. And again, this is how most companies do it, where you don't see advertising expense anywhere on the income statement, right? You go to the annual report, the 10K, if it's a publicly traded company in the U.S., right? You go to this 10K, and you don't see advertising expense anywhere here. So you go to the notes, and it says advertising expenditures, And then it tells you expensed in this automotive and other SG&A expense. So this line item right here, it's saying that's where the advertising is, and they tell you $3.3 billion for 2024. So this amount, $10.621 billion, okay, for 2024 for General Motors, $3.3 billion of that was advertising expense, okay? Now, I'll show you another one. Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble, consumer products company, okay? Of course, they're going to spend money on advertising. And in fact, a lot of money. But again, we have to go to the notes. And the note says, well, what's in SG&A? This line item right here. What's in the selling, general, and administrative expense account? And they tell you advertising costs for 2024, $9.6 billion. So this 23,305, again, that's in millions. So this is 23.305 billion of SG&A expense, and almost half of that was advertising expense. So you will have some companies like Nike that actually show you the advertising expense in the income statements, but for most companies I found that have advertising expense, it's going to be in SG&A, and then you go to the notes, and the notes will tell you specifically what was the advertising expense for each period.